What if your greatest love was also your biggest threat? What if your heart's desire plunged nations into war, changed the course of dynasties, or led to your own downfall? From the 11th to the 15th century, personal passions collided with political power in ways that still echo today. Number 9. King Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville. The year was 1464, and England was still bleeding from the Wars of the Roses. A brutal dynastic struggle for the throne. Edward IV, the young and Medoc king from the House of York, had just secured his crown after years of fierce fighting. He was handsome, tall, and considered one of the most eligible bachelors in Europe. Everyone expected him to make a grand political marriage, perhaps to a French or Spanish princess, to secure alliances and strengthen his grip on a fractured kingdom. His advisors, especially the powerful Earl of Warwick, known as the Kingmaker, were busy negotiating such a match. Then everything changed. Edward, known for his charm and his eye for beautiful women, met Elizabeth Woodville. She was not a princess. She was not even a duke's daughter. Elizabeth was a widow, a commoner, with 2 young sons from her previous marriage. Her first husband, Sir John Grey, had been a Lancastrian fighting against Edward's own house. By all accounts, she was stunningly beautiful, with long blonde hair and a captivating presence. Edward was instantly smitten. Their courtship was swift and scandalous. The king, against all advice and royal custom, secretly married Elizabeth on May 1st, 1464. In a small ceremony at Grafton Regis. Only Elizabeth's mother and a few others were present. When the news finally broke 5 months later, it sent shockwaves through the English court. The powerful nobility were furious. The Kingmaker, who had been negotiating Edward's marriage to a French princess, felt deeply humiliated and undermined. His carefully laid plans for international diplomacy crumbled because of the king's personal choice. Elizabeth, now queen, brought with her a large, ambitious family. Her siblings and children from her first marriage quickly rose to prominence, securing influential positions and advantageous marriages. This further angered the established nobility, who saw their power and wealth diminishing. The Woodville family became a new, powerful bloc at court, fiercely loyal to Elizabeth and Edward, but viewed with suspicion and resentment by many others. Chronicles of the time detail the widespread unpopularity of the new queen and her kin. The political fallout was immense. Warwick, feeling increasingly sidelined and disrespected, began to plot against the king he had helped put on the throne. He formed an alliance with George, Duke of Clarence, Edward's own brother, and eventually even with the exiled Lancastrian queen, Margaret of Anjou, a woman who had previously been his sworn enemy. This unlikely alliance plunged England back into civil war. In 1469, Warwick's forces captured Edward IV, briefly imprisoning him. Elizabeth, now queen, was forced to flee for sanctuary. While Edward eventually escaped and regained his throne, the marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had lit a fuse under the already volatile political landscape. It showed that even a king's heart could disrupt the most carefully constructed plans for power. Edward and Elizabeth had a loving marriage, producing 10 children, including 2 sons, Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, who would become known as the Princes in the Tower. Their love, however unconventional, endured through multiple rebellions and political upheavals. Queen, though widely resented, proved to be a strong and determined figure, fiercely protective of her husband and children. After Edward IV's sudden death, in 1483, Elizabeth's world collapsed. Her young son, Edward V, was proclaimed king, but was soon deposed by his uncle Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who became King Richard III. Elizabeth's 2 sons were placed in the Tower of London and were never seen again, their fate becoming one of history's most enduring mysteries. Elizabeth herself sought sanctuary again, living in fear for her remaining children. The scandalous love between Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville, a king who chose passion over politics, undeniably fueled the final bloody chapters of the Wars of the Roses. It shattered conventional expectations for a monarch's marriage and demonstrated how deeply personal desires could intertwine with and ultimately destabilize an entire kingdom. Her love for Edward brought her to the pinnacle of power, but it also placed her family at the very heart of a brutal dynastic struggle. Their romance became a symbol of a king's defiance, but it also became a powerful catalyst for further conflict and tragedy. Number 8. Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII. The year is 1509. A grand wedding takes place in England, marking the union of a young, athletic, and haddock King Henry VIII with his brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon. Catherine, a Spanish princess, was well regarded for her intelligence, piety, and quiet dignity. For nearly 2 decades, their marriage was the bedrock of the Tudor dynasty. She was a respected queen, and they seemed to share a genuine affection despite the political origins of their union. Catherine had initially arrived in England years earlier to marry Henry's elder brother Arthur, Prince of Wales. After Arthur's premature death, Henry VII, ever the pragmatist, was reluctant to let go of the substantial dowry and the powerful alliance with Spain that Catherine represented. A special papal dispensation was secured, allowing Henry to marry his brother's widow. Their early years together were marked by shared interests and affection. Henry wrote her love letters, and Catherine proved to be a capable regent when Henry was away on military campaigns. She gave birth to 6 children, though tragically only one, a daughter named Mary, survived infancy. The lack of a male heir began to gnaw at Henry. The Tudor dynasty was relatively new, founded by his father after the Wars of the Roses, and a male successor was seen as crucial for stability and continuity. As the years passed, Henry's desire for a son became an obsession. He began to interpret passages from the Old Testament, specifically Leviticus, which stated that a man should not marry his brother's wife, and if he did, they would be childless. Despite the papal dispensation that had allowed his marriage to Catherine, Henry became convinced that his lack of a surviving male heir was God's punishment for an unlawful union. He sought an annulment, claiming the marriage was invalid from the start. This request, known as the Great Matter, became a massive political and religious crisis. Catherine was steadfast in her belief that their marriage was legitimate in the eyes of God and the Church. She famously declared in court that she had come to Henry's bed a virgin, refuting the claim that her first marriage to Arthur had been consummated, which was key to the validity of the annulment. Her dignity and refusal to yield gained her widespread public sympathy. Henry, however, was determined. His eye had also fallen upon Anne Boleyn, a lady of the court who refused to be his mistress and insisted on marriage. Anne, intelligent and strong-willed, further fueled Henry's desire for an annulment. The political stakes escalated dramatically. The Pope, Clement VII, was under the control of Catherine's nephew, Emperor Charles V, and refused to grant Henry's annulment. King of England could not simply defy the Holy See without enormous repercussions. What followed was a cataclysmic shift in English history. Henry, driven by his desire for an heir and his passion for Anne, began to break away from papal authority. He asserted that the King of England, not the Pope, was the supreme head of the Church in England. Through a series of parliamentary acts in the 1530s, the English Reformation began. Monasteries were dissolved, and England severed its ties with Rome. Catherine was banished from court and separated from her daughter Mary. She continued to be recognized as queen by many, including international powers, but within England she was officially referred to as the Dowager Princess of Wales. She spent her final years in quiet defiance, refusing to acknowledge the annulment or Anne Boleyn's marriage to Henry. She died in 1536, still claiming to be England's rightful queen. The love and subsequent legal battle between Catherine and Henry, fueled by a king's desperate need for a male heir and a new passion, tore England apart. It fractured the unity of the Christian Church in Europe, leading to centuries of religious conflict. It solidified the power of the English monarch, transforming England from a Catholic kingdom into a Protestant one. Catherine of Aragon's story is a testament to the fact that even the most deeply personal of desires can trigger seismic shifts in the political landscape of a nation. Her loyalty and refusal to surrender her dignity forced a king to remake his entire kingdom, all for the sake of an heir and a different queen. Number 7. Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. The year is 1485. After decades of bloody civil war, the Wars of the Roses had finally reached a climactic end at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Richard III, the last Plantagenet king, lay dead on the battlefield. Henry Tudor, a relatively unknown Lancastrian claimant, had seized the crown, becoming King Henry VII. His claim to the throne was tenuous, rooted in a distant lineage that many viewed as illegitimate. To truly solidify his new dynasty, Henry needed to unite the warring factions of England. He needed to mend the deep wounds of a nation torn apart by the houses of York and Lancaster. His solution was a politically brilliant marriage, but one that unexpectedly blossomed into a genuine love story. The woman at the heart of this solution was Elizabeth of York. She was the eldest daughter of the Yorkist King Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville. By all accounts, she was a beautiful, gentle, and intelligent woman, universally liked and admired. Before Bosworth, a deal had been struck between Henry and Elizabeth's mother. If Henry could win the crown, he would marry Elizabeth, thereby uniting the warring Roses of Lancaster, Henry's house, and York, Elizabeth's house. The marriage took place on January 18, 1486, just a few months after Henry's coronation. It was a union born out of political necessity, a strategic move to reconcile the bitter rivals and bring peace to a shattered kingdom. For many, it was a symbolic marriage, a merger of two formerly opposed families. Yet, despite its origins, the marriage appears to have been remarkably successful and, by all accounts, genuinely affectionate. Henry, a cautious and somewhat reserved man, found a loving and supportive partner in Elizabeth. She was not involved in political intrigue, preferring to focus on her role as queen and mother. She was known for her kindness and compassion, endearing herself to the English people who had grown weary of conflict. Records show that Henry ordered expensive gowns and jewelry for her, and she accompanied him on progresses throughout the kingdom, presenting a united front. Their union produced 7 children, 4 of whom survived infancy, including Arthur, Prince of Wales, and the future Henry VIII. The birth of their children, especially a male heir, was paramount for the stability of the Tudor dynasty. Each new child further cemented the peace and legitimacy of the new royal line. Chroniclers of the time noted the apparent domestic harmony within the royal household, a stark contrast to the tumultuous reigns that preceded it. The political impact of their marriage cannot be overstated. By uniting the White Rose of York and the Red Rose of Lancaster, Henry and Elizabeth effectively ended the Wars of the Roses. Disaffected Yorkists found it harder to rally against Henry when their own princess was his queen and the mother of his children. Rebellions still occurred, but they lacked the popular support that a united royal family could counter. Their joint coat of arms, combining the Tudor rose with the symbols of York, became a powerful visual representation of the new peace. Their love story, while less dramatic than some others, was crucial for England's future. It was a quiet strength that underpinned the stability of a new dynasty. The personal warmth and respect they held for each other translated into a united front for a nation desperate for stability. Elizabeth's calming influence on Henry and her role as a unifying figure were vital. Tragically, Elizabeth died in 1503. Following the birth of her last child, Henry was reportedly devastated by her death. Sources describe his profound grief, retreating into seclusion and allowing no one to comfort him. This reaction was highly unusual for a king of that era, underscoring the depth of his affection for her. He never remarried, a testament to his continued devotion, although he considered it for political reasons. The marriage of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, though politically arranged, became a powerful example of how love and partnership could bring peace and stability to a kingdom ravaged by war. Their personal bond, a quiet and affectionate one, played a critical role in establishing the Tudor dynasty and steering England away from the brink of civil conflict. Their story demonstrates that sometimes the greatest political impact comes not from grand battles, but from a unifying love that binds a nation together. It was a love that laid the very foundations for one of England's most famous royal houses, ending centuries of bloody conflict. Number 6. John of Gaunt and Catherine Swinford. The year is 1366. England is embroiled in the 100 Years' War with France, and internally the reign of King Edward III is entering its twilight years marked by growing political tensions and challenges. In this turbulent environment, John of Gaunt, Duke of Lancaster, the third surviving son of Edward III, was one of the most powerful and influential men in England. He was a seasoned military commander, a shrewd politician, and a towering figure in the royal court. He was already married, first to Blanche of Lancaster, a great heiress, and then, after her death, to Constance of Castile, for whom he pursued a claim to the Castilian throne. Yet, his heart belonged to another. She was the daughter of a Flemish herald, born Philippa de Rode. Her sister, Philippa Chaucer, was married to the famous poet Geoffrey Chaucer. Catherine had initially come into John of Gaunt's household as a governess to his daughters by Blanche of Lancaster. She was a witty, intelligent, and spirited woman, and a deep connection formed between her and the Duke. Their affair began around 1366, while Gaunt was still married to Blanche. After Blanche's death, the affair continued and deepened, even during his second marriage to Constance of Castile. For decades, their relationship was an open secret in English court society, a scandalous but enduring attachment that transcended social norms and expectations. Catherine bore John 4 children: John, Henry, Thomas, and Joan. These children were born out of wedlock and were therefore illegitimate, carrying the family name Beaufort, after an estate in France. The sheer longevity and public nature of their affair made it a focal point of gossip and sometimes political criticism. John of Gaunt's immense wealth and power allowed him to largely ignore public opinion, but it was still a source of discomfort for the church and for those who sought to undermine his influence. When Gaunt eventually married Catherine, it was after Constance of Castile's death in 1394, making their union legitimate in the eyes of the church and state. This was a remarkable step for a man of Gaunt's stature, marrying a long-term mistress with illegitimate children. He did so out of clear affection and respect for Catherine, defying the social conventions that expected a royal duke to marry solely for political or dynastic advantage. Political ramifications of their relationship were complex. John of Gaunt was a dominant figure in England during the reign of his nephew Richard II. He effectively governed the country for periods, and his influence was immense. The Beaufort children, despite their initial illegitimacy, were eventually legitimized by a royal decree from Richard II and a papal bull. This was a crucial political act, as it brought a new, powerful family into the English nobility. Albeit with a caveat, they were explicitly excluded from the royal succession. However, the Beaufort line became highly significant in English politics. Through John Beaufort, the eldest son of John of Gaunt and Catherine, they would become powerful figures in their own right. Generations later, Henry VII, the founder of the Tudor dynasty, was a direct descendant of the Beauforts, through his mother, Margaret Beaufort. This meant that the enduring love affair between John of Gaunt and Catherine Swinford, initially a scandalous private matter, had a direct, if circuitous, link to the very foundation of a new royal house. Catherine, as Duchess of Lancaster, gained a respectability in her later years that had eluded her for decades. She lived out her life in comfort and dignity clearly cherished by her husband. Her influence on Gaunt was noted by contemporary chroniclers, who sometimes criticized it but acknowledged its depth. Their story is a testament to a deep and abiding affection that withstood social disapproval, political maneuvering. And the passage of time, John of Gaunt died in 1399, followed by Catherine in 1403. Their tomb in Lincoln Cathedral once stood side by side, a symbol of their lasting devotion. Their love, born from a long-term affair and culminating in a controversial marriage, illustrates how personal passions could intertwine with the highest levels of power, shaping the very fabric of future dynasties. The Beauforts, descendants of this unconventional union, would play a crucial role in the political landscape of England for centuries, culminating in their eventual rise to the throne. Number 5. Richard II and Anne of Bohemia. The year is 1382. England is around simmering with discontent. King Richard II, a young monarch still finding his footing, had only recently faced down the terrifying peasants' revolt. His reign was fraught with challenges. The ongoing, costly 100 Years' War with France, escalating tensions with powerful noble factions, and the growing Lollard movement challenging the authority of the Church. In this climate of instability, a political marriage was sought for the young king. Richard chose Anne of Bohemia, daughter of Charles IV, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Bohemia, and sister of the future Emperor Wenceslaus. The marriage was initially unpopular in England. Anne's dowry was modest, and the alliance brought little immediate military advantage. Many English nobles questioned the wisdom of the match. However, the union did secure a valuable diplomatic alliance and smoothed relations with the Holy Roman Empire. Despite the political calculations, the marriage between Richard and Anne quickly blossomed into a deep and genuine love. Richard, described as highly emotional and sensitive, found solace and counsel in his gentle and kind queen. Anne, known for her piety and compassion, quickly endeared herself to the English people. She was often referred to as Good Queen Anne. Their relationship was marked by mutual respect and affection. Unlike many royal marriages of the era, it appears to have been a true partnership. Anne's influence on Richard was notable. She was known for her intercession on behalf of prisoners and for her diplomatic efforts. She famously rode out to meet the rebellious peasants during the Peasants' Revolt, showing remarkable courage and helping to de-escalate tensions, though the revolt itself was suppressed brutally. Chroniclers of the time spoke of her grace and her calming presence. The couple was childless, which was a source of concern for the stability of the succession, but it did not diminish their bond. Their personal happiness was a stark contrast to the turbulent political currents swirling around Richard's throne. The king, known for his autocratic tendencies and his increasing clashes with his nobility, relied heavily on Anne for emotional support and advice. She was his confidant, his steadfast companion in an increasingly isolated and hostile court. Then tragedy struck. In June 1394, Anne died suddenly of the plague at Shing Palace, barely 28 years old. Her death was a profound blow to Richard. Accounts of his grief are vivid and harrowing. In his agony, he ordered the destruction of Shing Palace, the place where she died, unable to bear the painful memories associated with it. This act was widely seen as an example of his increasingly erratic and tyrannical behavior. Anne's death proved to be a turning point in Richard's reign. Without her calming presence and wise counsel, he grew more isolated, paranoid, and vindictive. He became more autocratic, increasingly alienating his powerful noblemen and making enemies. His decisions became more impulsive and less politically astute. The love story between Richard and Anne, which had been a rare beacon of warmth and stability in a harsh political world, ended in a grief that unleashed the darker aspects of the king's personality. The political consequences, Richard's increasing tyranny, and his relentless pursuit of personal vengeance against his detractors ultimately led to his deposition in 1399. By Henry Bolingbroke, John of Gaunt's son, Richard II's tragic downfall is often linked directly to his inability to cope with Anne's death. Her absence removed a crucial stabilizing force in his life, allowing his more destructive impulses to take over. The love between Richard II and Anne of Bohemia was a personal sanctuary amidst a storm of political turmoil. Her death, however, removed that sanctuary, and the king's unchecked grief became a significant factor in his eventual overthrow. Their story is a powerful reminder of how deeply personal loss can intertwine with, and even accelerate, political unraveling, changing the course of a nation's history. Number 4. Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile. The year is 1469. The Iberian Peninsula was a patchwork of kingdoms, often at odds with each other and with the last remaining Moorish stronghold in Granada. Spain as a unified entity did not yet exist. In this fragmented landscape, a marriage of immense political significance was about to take place, a union that would fundamentally reshape the future of the entire continent. This was the marriage between Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile, a pairing that, despite its clear political motivations, developed into a formidable and deeply effective partnership, both personally and politically. Isabella was a princess of Castile, half-sister to the reigning King Henry IV. Ferdinand was the heir to the throne of Aragon. Both were members of the Trastamara dynasty, making them cousins. Their union was strategically vital. It promised to unite the two largest Christian kingdoms of Spain, Aragon in the east and Castile in the west. However, Henry IV of Castile opposed the marriage, fearing the consolidation of power. He had other plans for Isabella's hand. Defying King Henry, Ferdinand and Isabella secretly married in Valladolid on October 19, 1469. It was an act of political defiance immediately, sparking a civil war in Castile, known as the War of the Castilian Succession. Isabella fought fiercely for her right to the throne against her niece, Joanna la Beltranea, who was supported by her uncle, the King of Portugal. Ferdinand, even before he became King of Aragon, provided crucial military and diplomatic support to Isabella. Their early years of marriage were defined by this struggle for power, with Isabella proving herself a shrewd and determined leader on and off the battlefield. By 1479, Isabella had decisively won the Castilian throne, and Ferdinand had ascended to the throne of Aragon. Their joint rule began cementing the personal union of Castile and Aragon. They adopted the title Catholic monarchs, given to them by the Pope, reflecting their zealous devotion to Catholicism and their ambition to purify Spain. Their love and partnership were exceptional for their time. While arranged, their bond grew strong, characterized by mutual respect, shared vision, and effective cooperation. They ruled as equals, issuing decrees and coinage in both their names. Isabella, a strong-willed and intelligent woman, held considerable power in Castile, while Ferdinand, a shrewd and pragmatic statesman, managed Aragon's affairs and foreign policy. Their shared ambition to consolidate power, restore order, and expand Christian rule united them. Their combined efforts led to monumental changes for Spain. In 1492, after a 10-year campaign, they achieved the final conquest of Granada, ending centuries of Moorish rule in the Iberian Peninsula. This marked the culmination of the Reconquista and was a moment of immense national pride and religious zeal. In the same year, they made the fateful decision to fund Christopher Columbus's voyage, leading to the discovery of the Americas and the foundation of the vast Spanish Empire. However, their reign was also marked by harsh religious policies. In 1492, they issued the Alhambra Decree, expelling all Jews from Spain who refused to convert to Christianity. This was followed by similar expulsions of Muslims. They also strengthened the Spanish Inquisition, an institution designed to ensure religious conformity, often through brutal means. These actions, while unifying Spain under a single faith, led to immense suffering and loss of life for minority populations. Ferdinand and Isabella had 5 children who survived to adulthood, forging crucial alliances across Europe through their marriages. Their personal relationship remained strong throughout their lives. Isabella's will described Ferdinand as the best of husbands, and upon her death in 1504, Ferdinand was reportedly heartbroken. Continued to rule in Castile as regent for their daughter Joanna and maintain their legacy. The love and political partnership of Ferdinand and Isabella were integral to the creation of modern Spain. Their union was not just a merging of crowns, but a merging of minds and wills that enabled them to pursue ambitious goals, transformed a fragmented peninsula into a unified European power, laying the groundwork for Spain's golden age. Their story demonstrates how a strategic love match, infused with genuine respect and shared ambition, can fundamentally alter the course of a nation's history, even if it comes at a great cost to others. Number 3. Harold Godwinson and Edith Swan. The year is 1066. England stands on the brink of profound change. Edward the Confessor, the childless king, was nearing his end. The succession was uncertain, and various powerful figures eyed the English throne, most notably William, Duke of Normandy, and Harold Godwinson, the powerful Earl of Wessex. Harold was the most dominant nobleman in England, a skilled warrior and a man of immense influence. He held the reins of power during the final years of Edward the Confessor's reign. While his public life was consumed by politics and war, his personal life held a deep, enduring love story. Harold's beloved was Edith Swan, also known as Edith the Fair. She was an Anglo-Saxon noblewoman of considerable wealth and influence. Their relationship was what was known as a Mordanico marriage, or a Danish custom marriage. This was a form of cohabitation or concubinage, recognized by Anglo-Saxon law, especially outside the strictures of the church. It was a common practice among the Anglo-Saxon elite, and children born from such unions were considered legitimate in society, even if not strictly, by canon law. Harold and Edith had several children together, at least 5 sons and 1 daughter. Their bond was deep and lasting, a true love match that transcended formal legalistic requirements. Harold was devoted to Edith and their children, providing them with wealth and status, and she remained his constant companion for many years. However, as Harold's political power grew, traditional royal expectations pressed upon him to solidify his claim to the throne and gain wider political support. Especially from the church and a powerful nobility, Harold was compelled to make a more conventional church-sanctioned marriage in January 1066. Shortly after Edward the Confessor's death and his own coronation as king, Harold married Edith of Wessex, sister of the powerful Earls Morcar and Edward. This was a purely political marriage designed to secure vital alliances in the perilous game of succession. Despite this political union, Harold's heart remained with Edith Swan. She continued to be his true companion, the mother of his beloved children. While Edith of Wessex became his queen in name, Edith Swan was his queen in affection and loyalty. The Anglo-Saxon chronicles and later historical accounts depict Harold's continued devotion to her, illustrating that for powerful men, personal bonds could run deeper than political necessity. The year 1066 proved to be one of the most tumultuous in English history. With Harold on the throne, England faced invasions from 2 formidable rivals, Harold Hardrada, King of Norway, and William, Duke of Normandy. Harold Godwinson bravely led his forces north, defeating Hardrada at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. But just days later, he was forced to march his exhausted army south to confront William's Norman invaders. 2 armies met at the Battle of Hastings on October 14th, 1066. It was a brutal all-day battle. Harold, leading his men from the front, was tragically killed, marking the end of Anglo-Saxon rule in England. English forces were routed, and William the Conqueror began his ascent to the English throne. In the chaotic aftermath of the battle, Harold's body was difficult to identify amongst the slain. It was disfigured and stripped. It was Edith Swan, his longtime companion and love, who was called upon to identify his body. She, along with 2 elderly monks, bravely sought out his corpse on the battlefield. Her intimate knowledge of his body, perhaps a birthmark or a distinguishing feature known only to her, allowed her to identify him where others could not. This poignant act, recorded in historical accounts, speaks volumes about the depth of their enduring love and her unwavering loyalty. It was a deeply personal tragedy amidst a momentous political upheaval. Edith Swan survived the Norman conquest, though her fate and that of her children after 1066 are less clear. Her sons either fled or were exiled, seeking refuge in other parts of Europe. Her love story with Harold Godwinson stands as a poignant reminder that even amidst the grandest political dramas, the most profound personal bonds can exist, shaping individual lives, and their story illustrates the personal cost of dynastic struggle and the enduring power of love even in the face of inevitable defeat and loss. Number 2. Heloise and Peter Abalard. The year is the early 12th century. Paris is a vibrant intellectual hub, the birthplace of early universities buzzing with scholarly debate and theological inquiry. Peter Abalard was a towering figure of his time, a brilliant philosopher, theologian, and logician whose lectures drew thousands of students from across Europe. He was monarch, renowned for his intellect, and a formidable debater. In this world of burgeoning scholarship, a love story unfolded that would become one of the most famous and tragic in history, shattering lives and challenging the societal norms of the age. Heloise was a young woman of extraordinary intellect and beauty, living under the guardianship of her uncle, Canon Fulbert of Notre Dame. She was fluent in Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, highly educated, and possessed a sharp, inquiring mind that matched Abalard's own. Fulbert, proud of his niece's abilities, sought out the best tutor for her, Peter Abalard. What began as a master-student relationship quickly blossomed into a passionate, secret love affair. Abelard, captivated by Heloise's brilliance and beauty, found himself consumed by a desire that defied his clerical status and scholarly reputation. Heloise was equally enamored, drawn to Abelard's profound intellect and his magnetic personality. They exchanged love letters and verses, meeting secretly, their intellectual connection deepening into profound physical and emotional intimacy. Their affair was a dangerous transgression. Clerics were expected to be celibate, and a scandal involving such a prominent figure would have enormous repercussions. Despite the risks, their love was all-encompassing. Heloise became pregnant. To protect Abelard's career and reputation, they kept the pregnancy secret. Heloise was sent away to Abelard's sister in Brittany, where she gave birth to a son, whom she named Astrolabe. News of the affair and the birth of the child inevitably reached Canon Fulbert. He was enraged, feeling betrayed and dishonored. Abelard, wishing to appease Fulbert and salvage his reputation, proposed a secret marriage to Heloise. Heloise remarkably resisted this idea. She argued passionately against it, recognizing that such a marriage would ruin Abelard's career and his prospects in the church. She believed that his genius should not be confined by the duties of marriage. She was willing to sacrifice her own reputation and even her child's legitimacy for his intellectual freedom. But Abelard, perhaps out of guilt or hope of reconciliation with Fulbert, insisted. They were married in secret. However, Fulbert was not appeased. He misinterpreted their secrecy, believing Abelard was trying to abandon Heloise. In a horrific act of revenge, Fulbert hired thugs who broke into Abelard's lodgings and castrated him. This brutal act brought an abrupt and devastating end to their physical relationship, and Abelard believed his career. Devastated and shamed, Abelard sought refuge in monastic life, becoming a monk at the Abbey of Saint Denis. He encouraged Heloise to do the same, and she reluctantly entered a nunnery, taking vows at Argenteuil. They were separated seemingly forever by the strictures of monastic life and the irreparable damage of their past. But their love story did not end there. Years later, their correspondence began. These letters, preserved to this day, reveal the depth of their enduring intellectual and emotional connection. Heloise's letters are particularly poignant, expressing her continued love for Abelard, her struggles with her monastic vows, and her reflections on their tragic past. Abelard's replies, while sometimes more theological and detached, also reveal his respect for her intellect and his own remorse. Their story, a clash between individual desire and the powerful, societal, and religious institutions of the medieval world, resonated through history. Their love, born of shared intellect and profound passion, ended in physical torment and forced separation, yet endured through words. It was a testament to the fact that even the most brilliant minds could be undone by the most human of desires, and that the consequences of such transgressions could be devastating for both the individuals involved and the political and religious landscape of their time. The story of Heloise and Abalard explores the boundaries of love, learning, and loyalty within a world dominated by absolute power. Number 1. Eleanor of Vquitane and Henry II. The year is 1152. The political landscape of Europe was a shifting tapestry of feuding kings, powerful dukes, and competing claims. In this volatile world, one woman stood above all others, Eleanor of Aquitaine. She was the most powerful woman in Europe, Queen of France by her first marriage and Duchess of Aquitaine and Gascony in her own right, inheriting vast rich lands in southwestern France. Her first marriage to Louis VII of France had been annulled after 15 years, largely due to her strong personality and their failure to produce a male heir. She was considered an incredibly desirable match, not just for her beauty and intelligence, but for the immense territories she controlled. Just 2 months after her annulment, Eleanor, then around 30 years old, made a bold and momentous choice. She married Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou. He was only 19, a mighty ambitious and notoriously energetic man. This was no ordinary marriage. It was a lightning-fast decision that sent shockwaves across Europe. Louis VII was furious, seeing his former wife and her valuable lands fall into the hands of his fiercest rival. The union of Eleanor's Aquitaine and Henry's vast continental possessions, Normandy, Anjou, Maine, Touraine, created the Angevin Empire, an enormous territory stretching from the Scottish borders to the Pyrenees. It dwarfed the lands controlled by the King of France himself. This new formidable power immediately became a dominant force in European politics and a constant threat to the French crown. Their early years of marriage were marked by intense passion and ambition. They were a dynamic, intelligent, and forceful couple, united in their desire to expand their domains and solidify their power. They produced 8 children in 13 years, including future kings Richard the Lionheart and John. Their energy and drive shaped the future of England and France. Henry, a relentless ruler, consolidated his power, reforming the English legal system and asserting his authority over the Church, famously clashing with Archbishop Thomas Becket. However, the powerful personalities that initially bound them together eventually led to conflict. Eleanor, used to wielding considerable influence as Queen of France and Duchess in her own right, found Henry increasingly autocratic and dismissive of her counsel. She felt sidelined and disrespected as Henry expanded his authority and ruled his vast empire. Henry, for his part, was a man of insatiable appetites and infidelities, which further strained their relationship. The love between them soured, replaced by a bitter rivalry. Eleanor, a woman who would not be contained, eventually rebelled against her husband. In 1173, she actively supported her eldest sons, Henry the young king, Richard and Geoffrey, in their revolt against their father. She encouraged them to challenge their father's authority and demanded that Henry give them more power and land. This family feud erupted into a major civil war that threatened to tear apart the Angevin Empire. Henry II, a formidable military commander, eventually crushed the rebellion as punishment for her betrayal. She spent the next 16 years, much of it under house arrest, unable to openly participate in politics. Despite her imprisonment, her influence remained. She was a symbol for her rebellious sons, and her vast lands were still hers even if Henry controlled them. Upon Henry II's death, in 1189, Eleanor was immediately released by her beloved son, Richard the Lionheart, who became king. Despite her advanced age, she immediately resumed her political activities, playing a crucial role in managing the empire while Richard went on crusade. She was instrumental in raising his ransom when he was captured and fiercely protected his interests. After Richard's death, she supported her youngest son John, ensuring his succession. The love story of Eleanor of Vquitane and Henry II began as a passionate strategic alliance that created an empire. It ended in personal animosity and political warfare, demonstrating how quickly powerful love could transform into equally powerful opposition. Their volatile relationship, marked by ambition, passion, and betrayal, did not merely influence medieval politics. It fundamentally shaped the boundaries and power dynamics of England and France for centuries to come. Their story is a powerful testament to the fact that love, even at its most passionate, can be inextricably intertwined with, and ultimately shattered by, the pursuit of power.